The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another Second Breakfast podcast. I'm Andy Roth alongside Phil Duvall. Say hi, Phil.
Hi, everybody. Hi. I said it. I said hi.
Oh, I got nothing else. That's it. I'm done. I'm spent.
It's been a good day on Second Breakfast, everybody. Have a good.
Thank you. See you Friday.
So, yeah, that was good. We're just chock full of material. I got to tell you, Andy.
Tell me, Phil.
I'm like reeling right now. I can't. Okay, we're about to tell you the movies that we saw this week, and I actually can't list $1 Million Baby because technically I started it 45 minutes after it began or 40 minutes after it began.
Sure. But
I watched it from that point all the way till the ending. Okay. I know people think the ending's sad and they cried. And they are correct. That is completely accurate. Like, that's not... Don't let me stop you.
Feel good family fare.
Right. No. But just to be clear, I turned it on, and within the first scene, started crying.
Wow.
And then pretty much just cried on and off until the end.
Sure.
And I'm going to save a little bit of that for later. I'll tell you in a little bit.
Okay.
But all I have to say is, holy crap, Clint Eastwood. I mean,
yeah,
he's got such a weird reputation. He has managed to somehow still avoid being considered one of the great filmmakers of our time.
And I don't
because of some of the
that.
stuff he's made. Because some of the stuff he's made is less than great, and because he's getting older and he's a little like. But you know what? I don't care.
Yeah.
I mean, if all he ever did was Unforgiven, or frankly the outlaw Josie Wales,
yeah,
we'd be done.
Yep.
But I mean, this movie, Unforgiven, $1 Million Baby, A Perfect World. Gran Torino is imperfect, but imperfect in such an amazing way.
Yep.
And he just makes movies that just what was it? The Sands of Iwo Jima. I mean, okay. Clint Eastwood, people. That's all I'm saying.
Oh yeah.
National treasure.
Agreed.
Okay. What'd you see this week, Andy, in our fallow month or week?
It was a fallow week. I saw only 3 movies this week, Phil. I saw The World's End again. That's number 3. I might be done in the theater. I might not be because this is not just like fanboy gushing. It actually it gets demonstrably better every time you watch it because you could focus on new things, and it is like a Swiss clock. It is put together so well.
I'm getting ready to see it again. I think I'm getting ready to see it again.
I'm excited for you. 5 Easy Pieces, which we'll be talking about in a bit. 5 Easy Pieces. It's an early movie. It's an early movie starring Jack Nicholson. It is not one of his. It's a fairly well-known movie, but it's not one of the first things that usually comes up when people think about Jack Nicholson.
It's known by film aficionados and geeks. It's not one of those movies where if I was talking to my wife and was like, Jack Nicholson from 5 Easy Pieces, she'd be like, "That's the one you chose?"
No,
really?
Yes. Well said.
But it's the one that sort of cemented him as the real deal leading man.
It is like top 10 performances of all time good. He is so good in that movie. And what is amazing to me this time through when I watched it was just how much Karen Black, who just passed away a couple weeks ago, Karen Black plays his sort of like ditzy but unbelievably warm-hearted girlfriend with enormous air quotes around it. She holds the screen with him. And
you totally had me because you were like his girlfriend with enormous, and then you said air quotes around it, and I was like, Andy, I thought this was for a second. I thought we were going to breach past our family podcast scenario.
I'm
glad that you kept it clean.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Well, and that I just think everyone should know that the reason this is a family podcast is because of you.
Yes, clearly. I don't.
Ain't me.
I just. From talking about it, I'm going to wash my mouth out with soap when we're done with this podcast. And I don't even know what we're talking about. And then the third movie I watched, had never seen it before, the original version of The Italian Job, starring Michael Caine.
Okay.
It came out in 1969. It is Michael Caine at his Michael Cainiest. I don't think that the new version with Mark Wahlberg is a great movie. It might not even be a good movie. It is, to me, a fun movie to watch because
I've never seen it, but it has a really fun reputation.
Yeah, Mark Wahlberg's fun to watch. Edward Norton's fun to watch. Charlize Theron's fun to watch. Mos Def is fun to watch. Seth Green's fun to watch. Everybody in it is fun, right?
You put all those people in a movie, it's bound to at least be watchable.
Yes, here's the deal. It's also like an exciting heist movie that has some fun things in it.
Mm-hmm.
The original, it's a heist movie without a heist. Like the heist takes up like 3 seconds of the movie, and then there is the famous thing, which is like the only thing they lifted from the original when they made the remake. The getaway is with like Mini Coopers, and they like go through the sewers, and that's really cool, and that lasts for probably about 10 minutes. But the rest of it is build up, and it's not even like them practicing stuff. Like we break into a safe, so there's got to be a montage where someone's like
practicing.
Right. There's none of that. I watched it. I just watched it, and I could not tell you what happens for the first 4/5 of the movie. It's Michael Caine being Michael Caine. I don't.
Maybe.
I don't. It's not even like a movie. Like it doesn't even like. Was it good? Was it a movie? I don't like it. It's mystifying me. And
words and things.
And the end is totally absurd and not in the fun way. It is a literal cliffhanger.
Okay.
And it's just like, were you planning on a sequel, guys? Because you had to know that you were making a pile of poo on some level. That's and I am spent. And I am spent. Those are my 3 movies.
Did you not see In the Loop this week? Since the last time we talked, did you see it? Did you mention it last week when you talked about it?
Last week. I mentioned it last week.
Well, I'm mentioning it this week. I saw In the Loop.
Okay.
I watched with you 5 Easy Pieces, and then I only saw 3 movies too. And my 3rd movie was a movie called It's a Disaster, which you've heard of.
How was it?
It was incredibly mediocre.
Yeah.
You know how this movie took the independent cinema world and festivals by storm? It didn't. Oh, you know why? Because it's not that great. I have a problem.
Tell me about it. Zing! Nailed it.
I have a problem when a movie tries to portray people that it clearly knows nothing about.
Okay.
And I don't want to get too deeply into it. I really don't. I think it's a larger conversation, and it's not my one big thing. But I noticed it as a Christian. There's a character who ends up becoming like basically the movie's about this, like the world ends, but it's not really the world ending. It's like, well, you'll see. You'll probably still see it because it's an apocalyptic movie. It's an apocalyptic movie about a group of friends, and then it's very possible that they're all going to die. And everyone in it did a great job, and there were some really good moments in it. Mm-hmm. But there was a couple things, and I can't remember one of them. One of them, it was just like, come on, everybody knows that. Like, why would you shoot? Why would you do something like this? Okay. But then the other thing is, they do this thing where one of the characters turns out to be a religious fanatic.
Okay.
Which you don't know for the first, literally of the hour and a half movie, you don't know for the first 80 minutes.
Whoa.
Right. And they're having a brunch on a Sunday, and somehow it doesn't get mentioned if he was a religious fanatic. Probably went to church that day, maybe. I don't know. Right. He's there on a date with someone. She didn't know he was a religious. Really? So it turns out, like, and they do this thing where, and it's simple stuff, but it's like, so for instance, he starts quoting from the book of Revelation. It's like, which is just such an easy go-to when it comes to people being like, it's the end of the world, which would be great if anyone actually ever read that book and tried to figure out what it was actually about, rather than just what they think it's about, since it's not about the end of the world. But anyways, but not only that, but he calls it Revelations. And here's the thing. If you were to call the book of Revelation Revelations, I would not be offended, because you are not a Christian, and you're not a religious person, a religious Christian.
Right.
But for someone who is purportedly a religious Christian, to call it that. So clearly the writer just didn't bother to do the homework. The other thing that he did was, so this person is apparently, he teaches history, but it turns out he teaches church history, or the history of Christianity, at a school called St. Andrews. but then he's supposedly this crazy fanatic Christian. Okay, well, there's about 1 billion problems with that if you know anything about Christianity. There's like, well, first of all, he'd probably know how to say the name of the book, just first of all.
Indeed. Yes.
But it's stuff like that where it was literally like this writer was really clever and had these really good moments, but then, and that wasn't the only one. There were a few that I noticed that were like that, where it's like, you just didn't bother to know the secret handshakes of the things you were talking about.
Right.
And it ends up, to me, it's just kind of condescending. Like, know your audience, you know? And I feel like, I mean, The World's End is a great example of a movie that I don't think, and I think Edgar Wright and those guys, they don't go beyond the scope of what they understand.
Yes. That's.
They certainly don't criticize things they don't understand. They criticize things as they see them.
Yeah. I never really thought about it in those terms, but that's a really interesting point.
Well, that's why they're good at what they do, because their critique works within, even if they're wrong or you disagree with their critique, it's a very intelligent critique.
I
know you feel that way about that movie.
Yes, but also, that leads me into. I mean, and we don't have to talk about it at this moment, but that leads right into what I'm going to talk about for my one.
And hit it right now.
Yeah,
right, let's go. Because I don't want to say anything else about that movie.
All right. So my one big thing, you know, I honestly don't know if we have said this on this podcast, but Phil, I know something that you've heard, because I heard it all the time. In college, when we were acting, various people said it. You know, the audience, when you make a choice as a performer or as a director, you have to make a choice. It doesn't mean the audience has to know what it is. Mm-hmm. But if you don't make a choice, then it becomes then it reads muddled to the audience. And I want to bring up, and I will do it without spoilers. I want to bring up the endings to The World's End and The Spectacular Now.
Okay.
Because The Spectacular Now ends with, it doesn't end with a question, but it ends basically with an unspoken question. And you don't hear the unspoken answer.
Right.
And The World's End ends...
That drives my wife nuts, by the way.
Sure. And it... How to put this? The World's End doesn't necessarily end with a question, but it ends without wrapping up fully a lot of threads. Mm-hmm. And what I think both of those movies do very well, and what I don't think, and this is low-hanging fruit, but whatever, what something like Getaway did not do well, and something like pretty much every movie with the possible exception of American Psycho that has been made from a Bret Easton Ellis movie does not do well, is the ending. Because they Bret Easton Ellis ends his, I think it's been a really long time since I've read any of his books, but like all of his movies seem to end like in the middle of a sentence. Yeah. And that's fine if no, it isn't fine, but it would be fine if I felt like the filmmaker knew how that sentence ended.
Right.
And I don't.
Well, you'll see that in plays where they will have lines where I'm talking and then as the actor and the other actor's supposed to interrupt me.
Yes.
And it's like, well, you have to know, and you'd know when someone's not very good at acting, like we'd be doing a scene and someone would be like getting ready to be interrupted.
Right.
So they'd be like, so therefore, and...
Right.
It's like, no. You have to have in your mind the end of that sentence. Fully with the knowledge that the end of that sentence will never be said.
Yes.
As the character, you still have to know it, because that's part of the thing that gives you the conviction that creates any sense of believability, any sense of plausibility.
Yes.
So the director has to have a sense of, no, and I'm with you. At the end of Spectacular Now, I would say the director, I mean, I would guess, I don't know, I guess the director, I wanted to say that I think the director knows what happens at the after the thing.
I absolutely think he knows. I absolutely think he knows. I feel like
wow, I want to talk with you about that.
Yes.
Either off the air or we need to do an episode on Spectacular Now, because I am firmly in the category of there is no answer, and you are in the category of there is an answer.
Yes, but more importantly, with that particular movie, and this is all I can say without spoiling, and we'll spoil when we talk about it at a later date, but I don't want to do it now. Everyone, go see The Spectacular Now.
Seriously.
It is so good.
Wait, everybody, you haven't seen it yet?
Go.
I feel like Ferris Bueller at the end of the movie.
Go.
You're still here?
Go home. Go.
Go see the movie.
It's everything that isn't a spectacular now is over. Go
now. This podcast, you can pause it.
It's true. The thing is, I think he gives you clues as to what it will be, even if it's just like the characters that he's built. But the reason he ends at the place that he does is because the story that he is telling does not need the answer to the unspoken question. It is not about...
Because it's not about the answer.
Yes.
Right.
It is about what brings the people who are in that scene to that moment.
Yes.
And so to tie it into what you said about your wife, were it not about that, were it about the answer to that question, if it had ended that way, it would have driven me nuts too. And I'm not saying maybe it drove her nuts anyway, but that's the kind of thing that drives me insane, because that's what leads me to believe you have no idea how that moment is resolved, and you have to. And I mean, Getaway, because it's my easy go-to answer for a terrible movie I just saw. Like,
sure,
it somehow does both things. It over-explains everything and has no idea why it does anything.
Oh,
it's a truly terrible movie, and still an Oscar winner compared to the Die Hard movie that came out in February.
Is it that bad, really?
Oh my god, Phil! Oh my god, it's so bad. It is so bad. You don't. It's impossible for you to know, and I want it to stay that way. This is not a secret I want to share with you.
No worries.
Good. So that's my one big thing. Just sort of like shining a light on. Oh, for example, you mentioned $1 Million Baby. You know what?
I did.
There's some stuff that's open-ended at the end of that movie.
Yes.
But I don't think for a second that Clint Eastwood doesn't know what happens to everybody in that movie.
Exactly.
Does that make sense?
Yes, it very much does. And yeah, that movie. I was watching it just being like, there aren't movies like this now.
Yes.
Like that, there's nothing.
Yeah. I know.
Okay. My one big thing is about $1 Million Baby. It's about crying. It's about us crying in movies. Now, Andy, you and I both cry a lot.
Do you mean, when you say us, do you mean you and me specifically?
You and me specifically, yes.
Okay. I'm not ashamed of it. I just want to sort of like set up my brain. But I could also just mean
we, the moviegoers of the world.
Sure, yes, okay.
But what I'm interested specifically is this. The end of that movie, you cry because you've just been devastated.
Yes.
And as you would say about other movies in the past, I will say about this. If you aren't devastated by that movie, like honestly, truly shocked, and maybe it's either because you choose to allow you do that thing where you try to create that cynical shell around you so that nothing can penetrate your cold, splintered heart.
You are a rock, you are an island.
Right,
la,
right.
La. Yes.
A rock feels no pain.
Yes.
La la. It's either that, or you're just. I guess what I would say is like it doesn't mean we can't be friends. I just don't know how far our conversations can go.
Yeah, right. There would be a point of time very early that we would run out of things to talk about.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
But when I turned the movie on today, did I say this before? Did I say this on the air or off the air? About how I started crying the moment I started watching it? Did I say that? Okay.
You did. But...
Was that on the air? Okay, because I said it to you before. Okay, so I start literally, and the thing was, I'm watching the movie, and now I've seen it before, so there's all the baggage with it.
Yeah.
But there's a moment very early on. I turned it on, and it was when she just started fighting, when Maggie had just started fighting.
Right.
And she's fighting, and she wins. She knocks something out, and she turns around, and she looks at Frankie, which is Clint Eastwood's character.
Yeah.
And she gives him this smile, and I'm going to do it again. I just started crying. And then she said something in the movie to him, and I just started crying. And I was crying. Part of it is definitely like I know what's to come.
Yeah.
But it's not just that. It's that knowing what's to come. It was like the reality of the tragedy, not knowledge of the fact that this movie is a tragedy. Knowledge of that coming through it. While watching it, actually made the purity of the characters more beautiful.
Interesting.
That the purity of her love for him and her loyalty, they play the loyalty and the love in a way that is it just seems real and not manufactured and not overdone and not there's no easy outs with this movie. There's no easy outs. And that includes the way they show affection. And so when you realize by the end of the movie that these two, they're not lovers by our definitions.
Right.
But they are in love, even if they're not, again, and they're not even in love by our definition.
Right.
They're in love like they're flesh and blood in a way that they never, in the way that their own flesh and blood never could be.
Yes.
When you realize that and then you go back and watch the movie and see how that develops and recognize it happening, I cried and I cried and I cried and I cried, and it was like to the point where, like, there's that point where she goes back and sees her mom, and her mom is played by who she's played by Margot
Martindale.
Yes. And she is just awful in this movie. I mean, and I mean in the best sense of the word.
Yeah.
You hate flames at the side of your face burning, and I mean, it's just so.
Kyle Chandler in The Spectacular Now hate.
Oh, way more. No, I hate her way more.
It's fair. That's fair.
Yeah.
It's been a while since I've seen it, but
there's something
that kind
goofy
of thing.
and stupid about him, and like he doesn't even realize what a terrible person he is.
That's fair.
But she like takes a turn. Anyways,
that's fair.
There's this moment where you see her with her family, and you see how she is, and she doesn't say anything to them. She doesn't fight with them. She doesn't do any of that stuff, and they're just in the car, and he doesn't say anything either. Clint Eastwood doesn't say anything either, and they're in the car, and they're driving back to wherever they're driving to, and she just goes, "You're all I've got, Frankie." Very simple. You're all I've got. And she always calls him boss. Always calls him boss. She's just boss, boss, boss. Then she just goes, "You're all I've got, Frankie." And he looks over and he goes, "Well, you've got me." Like, in other words, well, I may be all you've got, but you've got it.
Right.
And that's it. That's the end of the freaking scene, right? Actually, he makes a joke about that. He's like, "Well, you've got me, at least until I find you a better trainer." But like, which is even better because it's like him being like, "You've got me until until I'm not good enough." But it's like that, like. It's so simple, and I didn't do it justice at all, but it's like, I cried, of course. Yeah. And I think what I wanted to talk about is, like, when we were kids, we probably didn't cry much at anything movie-wise. You didn't see movies that made you cry. But then when you cried for one reason and one reason only. Why do people cry when you're a kid? Because you're sad.
Yes.
That's it.
Yes.
And I don't know when it turns, but at some point in your life, something happens where you cry for another reason other than sadness.
Yep.
And I have found, as I've gotten older, as I've seen things happen, as I've fallen in love, as I've gotten married, as I've had a child, as I've seen my dad die, as I've whatever things they are, that my heart fills up a lot more quickly.
Yeah.
And then I'll just cry more easily. Mm-hmm. And movies, I will cry at the drop of a hat. But when people hear that, they think I just mean if something's sad. Not really.
Right.
Like if something's cheesy, I won't cry.
Yeah.
Like, I'm not going to cry at something cheesy, but I'll cry at, like, a joyful moment.
Oh,
and I'll cry at, like, a poignant moment. And I'll cry at bittersweet.
Yeah.
I remember the first time, this is so cheesy. This is cheesy, okay?
I can't wait. I cannot
But
wait
the
for
first time I cried at something that wasn't sad.
Okay.
I was 11.
I cannot wait. Oh, my God.
It was Dances with Wolves.
Awesome!
Now.
Awesome.
I cried when they shot the horse.
Uh-huh.
Because you cry whenever animals die.
Yes.
It's a rule. If they shoot a horse and you don't cry, pardon me, but you go to hell and you die. Like, come on. Then I cried when they were shooting at the wolf, because at that point I was just wrecked.
Right.
But then at the end of the movie, when Dances with Wolves character, Kevin Costner's character, by the way, I haven't seen this movie in literally a dozen years at least. Maybe not since like 1992. I mean, it's been a long time since
it's been a long time for me as well.
But the very last scene, he's going off to wherever he goes, I guess with the white man or whatever. And one of his Indian chums, the one that he I just said chum, that's right. One of his Indian chums, one of the guys that he first fought with, is standing on a cliff and starts calling out to him. And he's like, "Remember me?" And he's like, "Remember, I wasn't afraid of you. I wasn't afraid of you." And I'm 11 and I'm crying. And I'm just crying. And I think at that point, I wasn't sure. I knew that it was sad, but not sad, again, not sad like
Old Yeller
this person died.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
It was the first time I cried just because something was bittersweet.
Yeah.
And once you cry just because something's bittersweet, buddy, the floodgates are open and you will cry at anything.
You will find this perhaps hard to believe, but there was a time, and it's not like until last week, but there was a time when I didn't cry at all at anything. It was not even sad things. I was like, no, nope, no. And then I love that story, Phil. I love it. I don't remember when I first cried at something that wasn't sad. Because of course, when I did start crying in movies, the first things were sad things. Right. But I remember the first time I realized it was okay. I was watching The Color Purple with my dad. And my dad was crying. And I was sitting in front of him, and I kept turning around to see, should I cry? Should I cry? And he paused the movie. He's like, Andy, cry if you want to cry. Don't if you don't. Whatever you're feeling is totally fine.
It ain't up to me, son.
Right. And I was like, oh, okay. And of course, I didn't immediately start crying at everything, but now I'm basically a limp, wet dish rag. I mean, let's be honest.
No, my mom used to get mad at me. I went to the movies with my mother more than anybody. More than anyone else I went to the movies with growing up.
Okay.
We would go together all the time.
Okay.
And she would be like, stop looking at me.
Right.
Because watching your mother cry was terrifying.
Yes.
And my mom would cry at the drop of a hat.
Yep.
And so I'd be sitting there looking at her, like, how do I deal with this? And she'd be like, stop it. Stop looking at me. Oh, look at me. And we still joke about that. Like, she'll still be like, you had to look at me. I'm like, I don't know. It's crazy weird. It's really weird. You're crying. Like, but you're right. We look at them for permission of when it's okay.
Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, that's the deal. The crying, man, the crying, the happy crying, the sad crying, the everything in between. Oh, I'd like to, before we go, I shouldn't have told people that don't cry when horses die that they're going to hell. Or that I shouldn't have said go to hell. I apologize. Hell is reserved for people with souls. And
nice. Well played.
If you don't cry when an animal dies, you aren't evil, and you are not deserving of punishment. You are deserving of our pity because you have no soul.
No soul. I like it. So those are our one big things, and
that's it.
And now let's. So today we're going to talk for the balance of our podcast about 5 Easy Pieces, which we mentioned earlier, and so about Jack Nicholson in general. In general, because it's Jack.
It's time because it's time.
That's right. It's time to do that. So let's start that, shall we?
Let's dive into it. There was this news recently. I don't know if it really was news, Andy. It was rumor, conjecture, conjecture that the great and legendary, wait for it, Jack Nicholson, was going to retire because he apparently is having trouble remembering lines, which I have so many problems with this as a theory. But that he was going to retire because of this, and
sure.
And there has since been sort of responses from one of Nicholson's publicists saying, no, he's not retiring. That's silly. He's not going anywhere. But nevertheless, Andy, when we heard this, it got us both a little bit sort of wistful.
It's true.
For what this could possibly mean. We've seen some of the great actors of our time retire.
It's true.
Gene Hackman is retired.
Sean Connery.
Sean Connery is retired.
Yeah.
And I take Gene Hackman more seriously in this situation, but nevertheless...
I do too. Oh, let's be clear. Yes.
But the idea of these people being alive and just deciding not to act anymore is strange to me.
Yeah.
I always assumed there would be a time when Gene Hackman wasn't doing movies. I just assumed it would be because he was dead.
Sure, yes.
Likewise, I am prepared emotionally for a day when Jack Nicholson is no longer acting
Uh-huh.
I expect that to be a time when he's also no longer sitting by courtside at the Laker game or driving too fast down Coldwater Canyon in his Mercedes or breathing.
I have to be 100% honest with you. I will almost be more stunned when he is no longer courtside. And let me see if I can explain why. Because he is someone that I have seen at all ages. Not all ages, but all of the ages where he was making movies. And like Jimmy Stewart, I've seen him at different ages, but he kind of looked the same at all those different ages. You know?
Yes, he did.
Jack Nicholson has grown, and I don't mean this in a pejorative way. He has grown old. He has grown.
Yeah.
You know, and so when you say something unbelievably cheesy, like, but we still have all of his performances with Jack Nicholson, I feel like that's an entire lifetime. You know, in a way that it isn't for Jimmy Stewart, in a way that it isn't for.
I don't know though.
Even like Paul Newman, I feel like he was great in, for example, Road to Perdition. Yeah. But I remember him from Cool Hand Luke. But Jack Nicholson, you've got Five Easy Pieces, which we're going to talk about. You've got One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. You've got As Good as It Gets. You've got About Schmidt. Like. It really runs the gamut. As this was happening, by the way, Second Breakfast Nation, we also got a lovely email from an excellent fan of the podcast, Adam Vibert. Hello, Adam.
Hi, Adam.
And Phil, where, pray tell, did he send this email?
Funny you should ask. He sent the email to secondbreakfastpodcast@gmail.com. That's secondbreakfastpodcast@gmail.com. And
if you would like to interact with us as the Honorable Mr. Vibert does, then you should send an email to us there too, because he sent us stuff as mailbag questions. You know what? We're bumping him up. He got the call. He's going to the show. We're talking about it for this, right? It's
true.
Yeah.
Put me in, Coach. I'm ready to play today.
Okay, so he sort of lists. He lists some of his great characters, and you've got R.P. McMurphy from Cuckoo's Nest. You've got Nathan R. Jessup, my God, from A Few Good Men, Colonel Jessup. Jack Napier from Batman. What's his name? Jack Torrance from The Shining. You've got Melvin Udall.
JJ from Melvin Udall. You've got Chinatown. Jake from Chinatown.
Jake Giddies. Yes. Oh my God. And
no, I mean, and it just goes and goes and goes.
So just a couple of questions, and clearly we're gonna expand on this, but just so we're certain to hit the things that Adam brought up. What is your favorite Nicholson film? And where do you think he fits in the pantheon of the greats? And I want to speak to that first because let's be honest, it's just revolutionary what I'm thinking of because I crap gold nuggets. So here's the deal.
Awesome.
We have.
If that was true, I would expect you to have more going on that wall behind you. That's all I'm gonna say.
Phil, me
yes.
too.
Okay. Go ahead.
So. We have talked on this podcast, which, Phil, you know, and Second Breakfast Nation, you might know. We've talked about sort of the two kinds of acting, of film acting. And one is sort of the chameleon actor, Daniel Day-Lewis, William Holden at times, Sam Rockwell.
Yep.
And then you have...
I was thinking about Sam Rockwell.
Yeah.
That's exactly... Oh, good call. Well done.
He's got a new movie coming out soon that the One Shot or something. I forget the name of it, but it looks amazing.
Yes.
And then you have the personality actors, and that's Jim Carrey, but it doesn't have to be.
It's like Jimmy Stewart.
Yes, Jimmy Stewart.
Humphrey Bogart.
No question.
Cary Grant.
More. Yes.
Jack Nicholson.
But here's what's interesting.
I
think here's what, if I can use the word, is totally revolutionary. What I'm about to say. I think more than any of those people that we just named, Jack Nicholson has done both. He's done both. If you watch him, like, in As Good as It Gets, and About Schmidt, and, let's be honest, Batman. I love him in Batman, but he's fairly hammy. But,
Amazing.
like, yes. But those are all personality performances.
Yep.
But the man who is the lead in 5 Easy Pieces is not the same man as the guy who is the lead in Chinatown.
I think it's tricky because a lot of times when we talk about Chameleon, we think in terms of just a total physical transformation. And so you think of guys like Christian Bale and Daniel Day-Lewis and Robert De Niro.
Right. But I would also put Kevin Spacey in that as well.
Sure, that's fine. And with Jack Nicholson, he always kind of looks like Jack. Physically.
No, you're right.
And I mean, and his voice is always his voice, and that's why I put him in that character column rather than the. But so I would disagree with you. But
personality column. You mean?
Yes.
Yes. Just.
That's why I would. Yes. But in no way detracts from, I think, what he does in 5 Easy Pieces. And let me be clear. I've said it before on the podcast, but let me be clear. Jack Nicholson is my favorite actor of all time.
Sure.
There are times when I dabble in other thinking it might be someone else. It's not. Like, I went for a couple of years where I just didn't listen to Dylan very much, and then, like, one day I woke up and was like, my life is so impoverished. And now I listen. I guarantee you I hear at least one Dylan song a day, and I'm a better person for it. And I think, like, I watched 5 Easy Pieces today. We decided to watch 5 Easy Pieces because neither of us had seen it in a while, because it's the first supposedly great Jack Nicholson performance. It's the first one where he's the leading man as Jack Nicholson, like, and he got nominated for an Academy Award. It's one of those performances. He plays Bobby DePee. And he just, so we decided to watch it. Also, it's streaming on Amazon for free. So that was one of our reasons for doing that as well, by the way,
yes.
For the record. But, it's just, the first time I ever went to the Man's Chinese Theater and they have the handprints and the footprints outside, I went with my buddy Wes, who's one of my best friends, and it was his first time in LA ever. And we went there, and his hands fit perfectly in Jimmy Stewart's hands. And he was so happy.
Nice.
He was so happy. And my hands fit perfectly in Jack Nicholson's hands.
I wanna film that and show it every Christmas. I love that. That's amazing.
That's how and it was one of those things where we both walked away the happiest people on earth.
Awesome.
Yeah, like we were like, it's Hollywood where dreams come true, baby. Nicholson is my man. He really, really is. And I gotta say, he doesn't have a lot of movies that are my favorite movies. Sure. To be honest.
Sure.
I mean, the list of movies that De Niro's in, I think I'd rather watch. Or, frankly, the list of movies that, at this point, Leonardo DiCaprio is in.
Sure.
But that being said, it's funny because a lot of times Nicholson's movies aren't these things you want to watch over and over again, but maybe he gets this almost, you mentioned his Laker, being in, like, courtside at Laker games, or him being, like, I think of front row at the Oscars. When he's not front row at the Oscars, it totally shocks me and it's weird.
Yeah.
And he's now got the personality, Jack, ! With the Ray-Bans inside. Right. And there's that personality thing about him where he's Jack. Like, come on, what are you going to do? He's amazing. Like, he's Jack Nicholson. There's really nothing he can't do in terms of, like, he could not do anything that would, like, make people not like him anymore. He really couldn't.
It's true. I think...
Like, he came out for the war in Iraq at one point, and I'm pretty sure that he came out anti-abortion. Do you know who cared? Nobody.
Right.
Literally, like, everyone was like, whatever, it's Jack Nicholson, he can think whatever he wants.
It's so funny, and I bow to your, if not superior knowledge, and maybe superior knowledge, but at the very least, superior care for Jack Nicholson. As much as I love him.
Adoration.
Yes. I really, like, I am, and I'm not really trying to convince you, but I really think that in terms of how I watch his performances, I don't agree with you. I think he is, I just think he's a different person. It's and
what, no, wait, hold on. But that's fine. That's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not disagreeing with that. But all I want to say is that we get so enamored as a culture with the personality of Jack exclamation point.
No question.
What blows my mind. So you and I are actually in agreement on this. That what blows my mind is that watching a movie like this, or thinking about Melvin Udall, or thinking about Colonel Jessup, which is just a shining jewel in just a turd of a film that is just not aged well at all. Has not aged well at all. But his performance in it is, I mean, he's in another movie. Him and J.T. Walsh are like in one movie, and then everybody else is in another movie. And
I will say this. The line, "He really does think better with that bat," is pretty amazing.
It is a great line. Yeah. No, look, no one ever accused Aaron Sorkin of not being able to craft a clever line. Okay, and I still love my favorite line actually from that movie is, you could take Dramamine, for your. And he's like, I'm afraid, he doesn't want to fly because I'm afraid we're going to fly into the side of a mountain. I don't think Dramamine helps that. Like, I always think about that. There's a lot of that movie. For all of my sort of antipathy towards Aaron Sorkin, that movie it actually gets a pass because I loved it so much when it first came out, and that was right when I was in the midst of discovering all of Nicholson's movies.
Sure.
Like I was just like because that movie came out like 94, I think, 93, 94.
Somewhere around there, yeah.
93. Came out 93, and I was just like, I was like 14. I'd just seen Cuckoo's Nest. Batman was my first Nicholson movie, so I was like, I love everything this. So then I just started watching Nicholson, and that movie came out, and I was like,
I was
shocked when Gene Hackman beat Jack Nicholson for Best Supporting Actor. Gene Hackman won Best Supporting Actor for Unforgiven.
Right.
And I couldn't fathom it. Now, since I've watched Unforgiven, I'm like,
okay.
Again, as an adult, I'm like, okay.
Right.
But still, it's a weird choice for me.
I am totally willing to believe that A Few Good Men has not aged well. Just utterly willing to believe that.
But it was a very important movie for my upbringing, to be honest. It really was.
Yes.
But Nicholson, I mean, this movie, Five Easy Pieces. Let's talk about Five Easy Pieces for a second because he is a revelation.
Yes.
It's not one of my favorite movies.
No.
Bob Rafelson movies are not my favorite movies.
Fair.
It's got that late 60s, early 70s, shall we call it, pace? Or I think more aptly named would be pace.
Okay, can I say something about that? I actually was more engaged this time. I was more like, that's not precise. That's true. That's not precisely what I mean. I was actually pleasantly surprised because I was like, man, I know Jack is amazing in this movie, but I am dreading this movie, and I didn't feel that way. While still totally agreeing with you.
No, but it pulls it off.
It's not a great movie. It is not.
One of the reasons is it chooses not to be 2 hours long.
Yep.
But I'll tell you what, if it's not a great movie, it still might be a great movie because that's how good he is in this movie.
Yes.
Karen Black is actually everybody in it. I mean, I love the relationships.
Yes.
Can I give you a confession?
Tell me.
I have no idea why it's called Five Easy Pieces.
It's a piano book.
Okay.
Five easy pieces to learn.
Did they show that at some point and I just missed it?
I confess I don't remember if they show it or they talk about it. But it stems.
I mean, I knew it had to do with music, but I couldn't figure it out.
But it stems from that. It stems from that conversation that he has with what's her name, the one he has, Catherine, where he's like, I just picked the easiest thing to play.
Yes,
which
is just such a distillation of who he is.
I find it so we just talked about how you just said a few minutes ago about how you find yourself crying about things that are not sad. And I guess this isn't quite that because this is sad, but there is nothing sadder to me than someone who doesn't, and I don't mean this in a glib way, who doesn't care, who just can't fight through his like boredom and nervousness and anxiousness and feelings of self-loathing to interact with the world.
Yeah, this movie is really deceptive, Andy. This movie is really deceptive because he's so charming. And he's such a perfect, charming middle child.
Yes.
And he falls into that category so beautifully, but they never mention that. It's just clear that that's the case.
Yep.
And he's adored by people.
Yep.
The people who know him adore him.
Yes.
And he's one of those people that everybody who sees him loves him.
Even his brother, and they would both say, we don't really get each other.
Right.
Yes.
But they just kind of adore him, and he's just this sort of golden child on one hand, but he never can quite deal with it.
Yeah.
And he doesn't know how, and he never quite. But it never. I think the movie's deceptive this way because you fall in love with Jack Nicholson's character so quickly, and he's the guy who says the things that he gets up in the traffic jam and gets out of the car and starts yelling at someone, and then just jumps up on the back of that truck and starts playing the piano.
Yeah.
And then just shows up at the recording studio, and it was just these things that he does where it's like, the famous diner scene,
right?
And then he sees this beautiful woman and he just goes after her and he gets her. And he gets Sally Struthers back before she, back when she was hot, and he does these things, but like, what ends up being amazing to me about it is that you realize that he is this charming person that every single person falls in love with, and yet he completely and utterly does not feel like he's part of anything. And not only does he feel like he's not part of anything, but like you see. He doesn't fit anywhere.
Yeah.
And that is, he's a working class guy, and his friend's like, "Oh, you're better than this, huh? You're too good for this." And he doesn't mean to act too good for it. He just doesn't. And then you see where he's from. But when he's around all those people, he's like, "You all are dead inside." And that scene where he tells off the
woman,
the most obnoxious woman in the history of the world.
God.
The woman who birthed every baby boomer in the history of the world. That's who she is. She is the Eve. She is the Eve of the baby boomer generation.
Nice. Mitochondrial Eve in
She is.
Yes,
she is.
Sure.
And he just. But what's amazing is in that same scene, he sticks up for Karen Black's character and then turns around and is like, "But I don't actually want to talk to you." Karen Black's character.
Yes.
It's devastating.
Ray.
Yeah. Oh, she's just amazing in this movie.
So the first time I watched this is only the second time I've seen this movie. The first time I watched it, and I didn't see it that long ago. It was within the last decade, say.
Okay.
I wasn't ready, frankly, for Karen Black's performance. I wasn't, because it's weird. Like it's weird in a way the other performances in this movie aren't. But I stand by my assertion that Jack Nicholson in this movie is probably one of my top 10 performances of all time. And she is every time she's on the screen, he's on the screen, and she holds her own.
Okay.
I
agree.
So
it's a magnificent performance.
Yes. She was nominated, yes?
Yes, she was.
Yes. Didn't win any. He lost Best Actor to George C. Scott for Patton, so I can't even complain about that. You know what I mean?
It's really difficult to complain about that. Although at least if he had won, he would have accepted it.
That's fair.
That's okay.
That's fair.
But then again, we never would have had George C. Scott not accepting it, which I love.
That's fair.
It's great.
Yeah.
Because he didn't believe in awards for art, and so he didn't show up. Period.
I confess, Best Supporting Actress that year was won by Helen Hayes for Airport. I have sort of studiously avoided seeing Airport.
You gotta feel like that ain't right.
And I mean, who doesn't like Helen Hayes? She's like the grand dame of American theater, right? I mean, she's. Sure. But this is not the Tonys. This is the Academy Awards, the Oscars, and I find it hard to. And you know who else was nominated that year in Best Supporting Actress? Sally Kellerman as Hot Lips Houlihan in MASH. Okay. She is wonderful.
Yeah,
right.
But Karen Black's performance.
Karen Black.
You know what it is?
She's playing a different game.
it's primal. I mean, there's this
Yes.
sort of primal, and that some people think that means sort of like somehow like an insult, like I'm saying primitive. I don't.
No.
I mean,
No, it
there's an
taps
elemental.
into
It's an
something.
elemental
Yes.
performance where
Yes.
everybody knows this character,
Yep.
but it's so human. I want to talk a little bit about the names of the characters in the movie.
Can I say one last thing about Karen Black?
You can say four last things about Karen Black. It's just amazing.
Because I want to talk about this. We don't have to talk about it now, but I want to make sure I don't forget it.
Okay.
I don't think in the entire, and I didn't check this because I didn't realize till about half or 3/4 of the way through. I don't think she says a single thing in the movie that isn't true. Whether or not she realizes it's true, she doesn't.
Right.
Like where she's in the car, or she's like canoodling up to him, and he's like, "Would you get off of me?" And she's like, you shouldn't treat me this way. You're never going to find anybody to love you like I do.
Yep.
Take care of you like I do.
Right.
All
no one will
of
ever
her
take care of you
lines.
like I do. Right.
Yeah. All of her lines are like that, and they break my heart because of like and that's it. We can talk about that later. Go.
No, all she wants to do is be loved. You know.
Yes.
So his middle name is Eroica, which is the name of Beethoven's Third Symphony, and it literally means heroic. It was the heroic symphony.
Sure.
But what's fascinating about the Eroica is that Beethoven wrote this symphony, and he was naming it. He was planning on naming it after Napoleon.
Okay.
And Napoleon just he really looked up to Napoleon. He believed Napoleon was supposed to represent all of the things that the new age of enlightenment and the new man and all that stuff.
Okay.
And later on, Napoleon disappointed him so greatly that it was still known as the Eroica Symphony, but he didn't want anything to do with him. So the idea of like this symphony being written, and it's a groundbreaking symphony. The Third Symphony is one of Beethoven's truly groundbreaking pieces, and it's got this name, this heroic symphony, that's written for someone that doesn't deserve it. So, so there's that. Okay.
Oh my God. Okay.
Okay. His brother's middle name is Fidelio, which is another Beethoven piece. It's Beethoven's one opera.
Okay.
And of course, Fidelio is named after someone who is faithful to his wife.
Yes.
Okay. And this is the one who's faithful to dad, who stays home, who's there with daddy, all that stuff, right?
Right.
And then you have his sister, who's named Partita, and Partita is a type of piano solo that was mostly performed by Bach. Bach made partitas. Okay. And I believe, and I could be wrong, but I believe she's playing a Bach instrumental when we first see her. And she's doing this thing where she's singing along while recording, and they're all annoyed with her. And the way they treat her, by the way, I was like, was the most sexist, awful thing I've ever seen. But what was amazing is that's actually what Glenn Gould was famous for. Glenn Gould, who was a famous pianist, who was famous for his interpretations of Bach's piano playing, was famous for singing along to the piano thing. Okay. But clearly that's where they got the inspiration from her.
She is, at Lois Smith, she is precisely the kind of character that drives me up a freaking wall, and she never does. She is, you could see, like, she is a baby bird with a broken wing in this movie. Yeah. And it's just, it's heartbreaking, but wonderful. You can coast for the next month, man. That was amazing. That's fascinating. Here's a fun little tidbit. Remember the two women that they pick up one
of them is Sally Struthers.
No, sorry, no, not pick up as in like, hey baby, like pick up as in like,
are you
going my way? The woman, there's the woman who's like, everything is crap for like 5 straight minutes. He's like, I don't want to talk about it. Everything is crap, which is funny, but I was like, I would have kicked her out of the car.
Out of the car so long ago.
Do you know who the other woman is?
Tell me.
Hey Mickey, you're so fine, you blow my mind. Hey Mickey.
That's why she looked familiar.
Indeed.
It's Tony
Basil.
Awesome.
Yes.
Awesome.
Amazing, right? I don't remember anything she does in the movie except for she giggles at something awful that the everything is crap woman says. But so what?
Are you ready for? Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I just. We talk about movies that are intentional. We talk about movies that like you see this is not a movie that's heavy on plot. It is all about the characters.
Mm-hmm.
But everything that happens which is the plot, you can draw like something bad happens to Bobby, he does something stupid.
Yep.
Like something bad happens to him, the next thing you see he is having sex with Sally Struthers. Something bad happens, the next thing you see is he's fighting with his one friend in the world.
Yep.
Like it is like a Swiss watch. It is constructed so well. And one of the reasons it works. Well, one of the reasons it works is we see these outbursts. He's got a violence in him. Yep.
But it's not a violence that is intended towards anyone else.
Yes.
And what I mean by that is he gets mad at the waitress, but all he actually does is throw everything onto the floor.
Right.
He gets mad at the woman he's about to bed, Catherine.
Yep.
But he just sort of shuffles the perfume around violently, but in a way that doesn't actually scare her off. It's never threatening or menacing.
Yes.
It's an outburst.
Yes.
Without being over. But here's what's funny is it never, when he does it, seems overtly childish. Only in retrospect, when you think about it, do you realize how deeply immature he is.
Something I love about that, like, it doesn't always work, but it doesn't never work. It sometimes works. Like, it works with Catherine. It does not work with the waitress. He does not get his toast.
No.
You know? I just
Catherine, by the way. Hachi Machi. Hachi Machi.
She weirded me out. What was her accent? What was her accent?
I don't. Beautiful. Beautifulese. I think it was Beautifulese, Andy.
Fair. Look, man.
Hottish, I think was her language. I don't know. It doesn't really matter.
No, it's fair. It's fair.
You're talking. Yeah. Details, my friend. Noise.
She is very good. She is very good in the movie, and everyone is, and it's what's wonderful about the movie, and I say this, and like I still hold fast, and maybe I shouldn't, to our contention that it's not a quote unquote great movie, but like the performances are across the board great.
Yep.
I love that he is,
and it might be a great movie because I would watch it again.
I would too. I love how quixotic everything that he does is, and he knows it. Like when he goes in to talk to Partita, and she's getting a massage from Spicer, the nurse, and he picks a fight with him. Nobody thinks he's winning that fight, even him.
And like, he also was the one who encouraged them to get together in the first place.
Yes, like everything he does, it's amazing. You get through that movie and you see how self-destructive he is, but you don't realize till you're thinking about it later, and this is a movie that invites you to think about it later, you don't realize that, like, even the things that you don't think are self-destructive lead to self-destructive things. Yep.
And then the end of that movie is just it's a perfect ending, actually.
It is perfect, and it guts me.
And up until that last moment when he's staring in the mirror, I forgot how it ended, and when he's staring in the mirror, I could have seen him kill himself.
Yep.
I could have seen him for a second. I thought he was just going to smash his head into the mirror. I really did.
I did too.
Right?
I did too.
And then there was a number of things I could have seen him doing, and he did none of them.
Yeah.
And I love that he did and he did the thing that worked for the movie.
Yes.
His conversation with his father was perfect.
Oh my god. I could watch that on an endless loop. I could.
Yeah, I think maybe this. I think it's a great movie. Actually, the more I think about it, because it's not my favorite. It's not the kind of movie I normally want to watch. But that's what I was going to say about Jack Nicholson is he isn't necessarily in movies that you want to watch over and over and over and over again. But he's in movies that affect you, and his performances are deeply effective.
Yeah. I need to think about it more. I may agree with you. I may tip over to great, but I will say this: it is not. It might be my favorite performance of his. It is not my favorite movie of his.
Yeah. Okay. I
think that's for me pretty undeniably Cuckoo's Nest.
I think for me, it's definitely the bucket list. No, I'm kidding. It's a joke. Come on. Come on.
Phil, I don't want to live in that world. I don't want to live in that world.
Well, I've seen that movie, by the way. So,
I'm sorry.
Me too. You're not as sorry as I am.
I'll tell you what. Someday, if we're still doing the podcast, but we for some reason hate each other, we'll do a podcast where you watch Die Hard 5 and I watch The Bucket List.
Okay, that sounds good. I will say it wasn't a complete waste because it had Jack Nicholson and Morgan Freeman in it.
I can absolutely believe that. No question.
Sure. Okay. I think that, really we could talk about 5 Easy Pieces for another 4 hours, or we could just shut it down now, and I think we should probably shut it down now.
I think we probably should. To sum up, Jack Nicholson, he's pretty good at his job.
So he's my favorite actor of all time. I'm really glad that he's not actually retiring, or I hope he doesn't retire.
Yeah.
I mean, he hasn't been in a movie in forever, and the last several movies he's done haven't been that great.
Sure.
But you know what? He's Jack Nicholson.
He is Jack Nicholson.
He is my favorite actor of my lifetime, and I want him to keep doing things.
Sure.
Or just the possibility of him doing things out there floating in the ether.
Right. Indeed.
So that's the thing.
So that's our discussion of Jack Nicholson and of 5 Easy Pieces. Thanks, Adam, for helping put it into our brains. And folks, that'll bring us to the end of another Second Breakfast podcast. And we will see you later this week. But in the meantime, I'm Andy Roth, and that's Phil Duvall. We'll see you again real soon. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
The most important meal of the day, second breakfast.